It was 3:26 in the afternoon on January 15, 2009, and New York City was locked in the kind of cold that gets into your bones. At LaGuardia Airport, US Airways Flight 1549 pushed back from the gate, bound for Charlotte, North Carolina. On board, 150 passengers, 3 flight attendants, and 2 pilots who had, between them, flown for more than 40 years without a single major incident. The captain was 57-year-old Chesley Sully Sullenberger, a former Air Force fighter pilot, a man who, in his spare time, studied aviation safety and crash psychology almost as a hobby. Nobody on that plane knew it yet, but they had one of the most prepared pilots in America sitting in the left seat. The Airbus A320 climbed off the runway smoothly, routine, ordinary. Then, 90 seconds later, at just over 2,800 feet, everything changed. A flock of Canada geese, some of them weighing up to 15 pounds, crossed directly into the plane's flight path. Sullenberger later said it looked like the entire windshield had gone brown, wall to wall, top to bottom. There was a series of loud thuds, then silence. Both engines had swallowed birds, and both engines had failed almost simultaneously. In the history of aviation, a total dual-engine loss from a bird strike at that altitude was almost unheard of. For a passenger jet with 155 souls aboard, this is the nightmare scenario. No thrust, losing altitude, over one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. First Officer Jeff Skiles was flying the plane at that exact moment. So Sullenberger took over the controls with 3 words: "My aircraft." Skiles began running the emergency checklist for engine failure, a procedure designed for pilots who have thousands of feet and several minutes to work with. They had neither. Sullenberger radioed air traffic control. He was told he could try to turn back to LaGuardia. He calculated the glide, the altitude, the distance, and he said something that stunned the controller: "We're unable." He considered a smaller airport in New Jersey, also unable. He had done the math in his head in a matter of seconds, and he'd concluded there was only one place with enough open space, no buildings, and a chance of survival: the Hudson River. This was not standard procedure. Landing a commercial jet on water in a ditching is one of the rarest and most dangerous maneuvers in aviation because an aircraft striking water at the wrong angle can break apart on impact instantly. Pilots train for it in simulators far more often than it's ever actually attempted for real. Sullenberger had roughly 3.5 minutes from bird strike to touchdown to decide, communicate, and execute all of it. He came in over the George Washington Bridge, low enough that people on the bridge said they could see the plane's belly. He leveled the wings. He kept the nose up just enough to slow the descent without stalling. In the cabin, the flight attendants were shouting the brace commands passengers train for but never expect to hear. Brace, brace, heads down, stay down. At 3:31 p.m., 5 minutes after departure, Flight 1549 hit the surface of the Hudson River. Witnesses on shore said it looked almost gentle from a distance. A long, flat skip across the water, more like a boat landing than a plane crash. Inside, passengers described it as a hard, jarring slam, but the fuselage held together. It did not break apart. Cold river water began pouring in through a damaged section near the tail. The air temperature that day was in the 20s. The water was colder still. Passengers had, realistically, about 20 to 30 minutes before hypothermia became lethal. What happened next is the part of the story people forget. Sullenberger walked the aisle of the sinking plane twice, checking every row, making sure no one was left behind before he would leave himself. Meanwhile, on the river, something remarkable was already underway. New York waterway ferries, which run commuter routes up and down the Hudson, saw the plane go down and immediately changed course. Within minutes, some estimates say under 4 minutes, ferry captains had boats alongside the sinking aircraft, pulling passengers from the wings and from inflatable slides that were never designed to survive water landings. Coast Guard boats, police helicopters, and civilian vessels joined in. It became one of the fastest, most improvised mass rescue operations in modern maritime history, executed by ordinary commuter ferry crews who had no advance warning and no time to plan. All 155 people on board Flight 1549 survived. There were injuries, or a few serious, but no deaths on a day when the math said there absolutely could have been. Investigators later ran dozens of simulations. In many of them, pilots who were told about the bird strike in advance and given time to think still couldn't safely turn back to any airport. Sullenberger had made the right call, under the worst possible time pressure with no rehearsal. He would later brush off the word miracle. He preferred to call it the result of teamwork, training, and a little luck. But for the 155 people who walked off the wings of that plane and onto rescue boats in the freezing Hudson River on an ordinary Thursday afternoon in January, miracle felt like exactly the right word.